Good afternoon and welcome to the next edition of the virtual speaker session presented by the Penn State Alumni Association. Today we have a great presentation lined up from filmmaker, documentary maker, Boaz Dvir. He's a faculty member here at Penn State, and we look forward to hearing him talk about his latest documentary, Class of Her Own. Let us know who you are and where you're zooming in from. You can use the chat at the bottom of the Zoom video window to drop your name and where you're zooming in from today. We'll be getting started in just a minute. We want to let the room fill up, but we are really excited about today's guest and today's edition of the virtual speaker series. I see Jaylene from Southampton, Pennsylvania. She's a teacher in Philly, and Rebecca from Bethlehem. She's at the Penn State Better Kid Care. Let's see, who else is here? Thomas joining from University Park. Welcome, Thomas. Amy from Orwigsburg. Welcome in. We will be getting started in just a minute I want to give the opportunity for those who have registered to log in. Good afternoon. Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's virtual speaker session titled Class of Her Own, What Can We Learn from a Rebel Teacher? Live closed captions are available. You can access them by clicking the closed caption button at the bottom of the Zoom video window and then clicking Show Subtitle. You may also customize your caption view by clicking the Stream to Text link posted in the chat. And we're live streaming today's presentation, which will be archived and available on our website. Today's guest is Professor Boaz Dvir. He tells the stories of ordinary people who transform into trailblazers. The latest example is Class of Her Own, a documentary Dvir directed that tells the story of an ordinary teacher who transforms into a classroom superhero after her high-need school fails the state standardized test. Gloria Jean Merriex rewrites the curriculum to meet her students where they are and infuses her lessons with hip-hop, dance, and call and response. She risks her job and health to propel Duval Elementary from an F to an A in 1 year and gives her students the tools to succeed in school and beyond. Forbes called the documentary a real-life mirror of Abbott Elementary. Additionally, film critic Dan Domench wrote, "The director, Boaz Dvir, saw something larger happening to Merriex and brought the truth forward." Professor Dvir will discuss the film with us, and his discussion is taking part today during National Education Week, which is happening this week in the United States. More information on his award-winning career can be found in the chat. Thank you for joining us, Professor Dvir. You can take it away.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Yeah, Zoom, it feels on some level a relic from the past, right? But here we are still using it, so that's cool. What I'll do today is kind of walk you through a story that, yes, imparts some of the lessons I learned from Gloria that I think are valuable today, in fact, more valuable today than ever. As well as the story itself of how Gloria became who she was. She was an ordinary teacher to begin with, but then transformed, as Paul mentioned, as well as kind of the backstory of how this all came about. So the story begins in 2008. At that point, I'm at the University of Florida in Gainesville, not Florida State, much like Penn State is confused with Penn. University of Florida sometimes is confused with Florida State. So this is the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. And I'm teaching there in the College of Journalism. I'm making documentaries. I'm in the midst of my first one. I'm making a documentary called Jesse's Dad. I'm filming a grieving father, a father who had lost his 9-year-old daughter to a sex offender. Really a tragic story. And he was an uneducated truck driver, long hair, tattooed, biker, a really interesting character who decided he was going to use the tragic event that took place in his life to help protect kids around the country. He helped create and pass Jessica's Law and is out there trying to push for it. He faced a lot more opposition than you might have imagined, and I'm following him around with a camera, and I'm certainly, immersed in that and have my hands full between following him around and doing my job and teaching and so forth and so on at the University of Florida. But then this story comes up. I find out about it in 2008, and I feel compelled to do it. So the first thing I find out is that in the city of Gainesville, which in some ways is very similar to State College, it's a college town kind of out in nowhere with a very large campus and a big football stadium, so very similar, but in some ways very different than State College. It's much more of a city. It has different areas, has different industries, and has what's known as the East Side. And the East Side is the low socioeconomic part of town, a rough kind of part of town. And I'll get to it. I'm sad thinking about it. You'll understand a little bit more as I get closer to describing it. But anyway, on the east side of town, there's a school called Duval that became one of the most successful and highest achieving elementary schools in the state of Florida. And you might say, well, what's the big deal? The big deal is that this was unexpected. This is a school, again, in an extremely low socioeconomic area. For instance, 95% of the 400 students who went there were on universal free meals. It wasn't called that then. That's a program that came later. But that's what it was. What it meant is that the kids were so poor, really, that the only opportunity to receive any kind of nourishment was through the cafeteria. So they would go back to school on weekends and on holidays to eat. This is how 95% of the kids. And yet this little school had risen to the top, and by 2008, in 5th grade math in particular, was ranked #1 in the whole state, the very best of all schools throughout the state. And that was fascinating. And I got together with a professor named Dan Pemberton at the University of Florida and some of his colleagues, and they had been studying the school. And we came up with the idea of spending a year there at Duval Elementary, spending a whole year there, filming it and telling the story, kind of a behind-the-scene kind of look at how this little school overachieved. And that's an understatement, that it overachieved. And to see what made it so successful. It had become a magnet school. Suddenly, kids were being bussed into it from other parts of town. It was revolutionary and exciting. And it had really been consistently successful. It wasn't just a one-off. For 5 straight years, it had aced its state standardized test. So was on a very solid academic grounding, and I was given unprecedented access. So A, I'm excited to tell the story of the school, despite, again, having plenty to do otherwise. But B, I'm super excited as both a documentary filmmaker and a journalist to have complete access to a school. That's hardly ever possible, especially while I'm working on this documentary about a grieving father trying to make elementary schools inaccessible, ironically, because the repeat sex offender who kidnapped and raped and murdered his daughter, a man named John Cooey, had a job at her elementary school, also in Florida. So here is this effort I'm filming to really actually kind of close down the schools and not allow people in. Well, I'm being given total and complete access to this school where I can come and go as I please. I can film whoever I want, whenever I want. All the kids, all the teachers, all the administrators, closed meetings, private meetings. I'm allowed to go everywhere. I build trust with everyone. And it's in itself, going there and filming it, that is really a rewarding and challenging, but mostly a rewarding experience for me that I will never forget and will always be grateful for. But there's more to the story. So here I am on day 1, which wasn't the first day of school. because we still had to get some paperwork done to get those permissions and so forth and so on. But it's soon after. It's a few weeks into the school year. It's like September maybe of 2008. And I'm driving east. I'm going to the school for the first time to film. Now, at that point, I had been living in Gainesville for 5 years, but I had also lived in Gainesville in the late 80s when I was an undergrad there. I got my undergraduate degree there too. So it took me only 3 years for whatever reason. So at that point, I had spent 8 years in the city of Gainesville and thought I knew it inside and out, thought I knew it very well, especially since I would come back quite often to visit friends and go to football games and so forth and so on. And don't worry, I'm rooting for Penn State too. I just have two teams, that's all, UF and Penn State. And luckily they never play each other, so there's no problem. So, and they're not going to play each other now because the University of Florida has a terrible football program. We're safe. Regardless, I am driving for the first time into the east side. And as I go in, first I'm shocked. I'm just shocked by what I see. That something like this even exists in my town. I'll describe it in a second. You'll see what I mean. But that it exists in Gainesville, an affluent town, beautiful campus, 50,000 students, so forth and so on, highly ranked, beautiful mansions on the west side of town, and so forth and so on. A football coach who makes millions a year, well, many coaches actually, who make millions of dollars a year. And second, you know, as a journalist, really, I mean, just shamed. So I feel shocked and ashamed as I drive that I'd never gone into this part of town, that this is the first time, that it took me so long. And as I'm driving in, I see, it's like a scene out of a movie, really. I mean, I see police chasing someone down the road. I see a drug deal. This is Monday morning. I see a drug deal go down. You know, I see what I think is a prostitute. I think she's giving money to her pimp. It's just like, I just cannot believe what I'm seeing. And through all of this, you see these little kids wearing uniforms, and on closer inspection, as I got to know them and film, I saw many of the uniforms don't fit. You know, they're hand-me-downs, they're dirty, they're torn. But anyway, they're wearing their uniforms, to it, you know, very compliant. Everybody's wearing their uniforms, and they're marching to school, almost with blinders on, like they're afraid to look this way or that way, so they don't want to see what I'm seeing. They just want to make it to school. They're just marching. So that was shock number one, and point of shame for me, number one, because I just don't believe that a place like this should exist in the richest country in the world. Then I go into the school, and I'm in for shock number two. So I was under the impression that segregation ended in 1954. And I understood that the ruling that the Supreme Court passed in 1954 declaring school segregation unconstitutional took time to implement, and in some cases took a couple of decades. I knew that, but I figured that by the early 70s, our school system was desegregated. Well, not the case here. Here is 2008, and I'm walking into a school that, yes, the administration and the faculty is certainly diverse, but the school population of students is 99.9% black. And that was a shock to me, because I couldn't believe that in this day and age we still had schools that were segregated in a sense. That's what it felt like. But despite all this, despite the rough neighborhood, despite, you know, what I perceived as initially a problem, later I learned that it's much more complex than that, and I can come back to it if we have time, and I can explain about community schooling. In some way, I kind of misunderstood the scene. It was not necessarily a negative thing for the community. The community saw it very differently than I saw it initially. I grew to see it their way. Nonetheless, you know, despite all this, there was a real strong positive vibe in the school. Really exciting. Kids are excited to be there. Teachers are excited to be there. There's learning going on. It's a magnet school now. They have tons of resources. They have every instrument that you can imagine. You're a kid, you want to learn to play violin, here's a violin, here's a lesson, go do it. You want to play a piano, here's a piano. I mean, really just well conceived as an arts academy, and really well implemented in terms of not just having those instruments and having great teachers there, but bringing in others, bringing in experts and speakers and folks from the university, and just a really wonderful community, intellectual place where the kids are thrilled to be in a safe environment. And it was just a joy to film there. But of course, one of the objectives at the time, to a lesser degree today, standardized testing still continues, but the stakes are much lower today than they were back then. At that point, the stakes were enormous. And so the school knew they had to do well on what in Florida was called, they don't even use that name anymore now, but what was then called the Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test, the FCAT. And it was stemming from the No Child Left Behind law that President Bush had passed in 2001, I believe, in the early 2000s, that again, made sure, according to the Bush administration, that kids were learning what they were supposed to learn and that schools and districts were held accountable for that. And as I mentioned, Duval had aced this test for 5 years in a row, which was really remarkable. Remarkable for any school to do, but particularly for this school. They had aced it for 5 years in a row, and now they're hoping, planning, aiming to do so again. But there's a problem. There's a problem, and I noticed it, I kind of knew about it, and that is that the star teacher, a teacher named Gloria Jean Merriex, was no longer there. She died in May of 2008 of a diabetic stroke. And she had been the recognized leader of the transformation that the school had seen from a failing school to a powerhouse, academic powerhouse. But she was gone. And that was definitely a gaping hole, without a doubt. She was missed. You could sense that too. And as I spent time there and filmed there for the whole year, I sensed that more and more and more. And I started to ask, well, okay, you got all these resources, you've done so well for so long, but your number one teacher is gone. How are you making up for that? Well, they described, they're doing this and they're doing that and they're using some of our techniques and so forth and so on. Okay, but still, how do you think you're going to do on this FCAT? They said, no, we're still going to ace it. We're sure of it. And as I pressed on, some admitted, well, maybe we drop to a B. Not a big deal, right? A B is fine. No one's going to cry over that. And maybe we're not number one anymore in the state. Maybe we're only top 10 or top 15. That's okay. People will live with that too, right? Even Alabama now is not number one. I think they're also in the top 15. So you can live with that. It's okay. So long as you're top 12, you make the playoffs. So, right? Everyone's cool. Everyone's chill. No one seems to be freaking out. But I'm starting to get worried. Because the more and more time I spend there, the clearer it becomes to me that here was this magical teacher who had an outsized influence on the success of each and every one of her students. And her students were all the students. So the FCAT is a test that's not taken by the first or second grader. It's taken by the third, fourth, and fifth grader. The third and fourth graders take, in particular, reading. And the fifth graders, in particular, focus on math. Well, what I found out is Gloria Jean Merriex, this teacher who had died, she taught all the third and fourth graders reading. Every single third and fourth grader was taught reading by Gloria Jean Merriex. And every single fifth grader was taught math by Gloria Jean Merriex. Yes, she had enormous classrooms of 50 students each. 50 students each. She used to teach in the library. I started to think, well, if that's who you were relying on and she's gone, you're probably looking at a C, right? I don't know that you're going to remain as one of the top schools in the state. And I'm kind of here to film that story, so I'm already starting to wonder, if they become an average school, what does that mean for them? What does it mean for the community? What does it mean for my film, right? To the story I'm trying to tell. And then the FCAT comes around, they take the FCAT, they're confident going in, they're confident coming out. I get to talk to them after, not during, but I do get to talk to them after and see how they felt about how they did. And they're confident, we did well, we're fine. But the scores come out in May, a couple of months later. And let's see if someone can guess how they did that year. Maybe put it in the chat. Anyone want to guess? What grade do you think the school? 50? I'm guessing a D. 50 means, I guess, an F. Oh, 50 maybe in response to me saying 50, 50 students in class. Guessing a D. Yeah, that's a good guess. The D is a very good guess. Actually, they get an F. They get an F. They fail. Pretty badly, by the way. Apparently, I did not know that, but there's different levels of Fs too, right? An F is bad, but there's like really bad Fs. Like you've really dropped. Like it's a low F, and that's what they get, is a low F. And so, it's sad. It's first and foremost sad for the students, sad for their parents. Many of the students, by the way, do not have two parents. Many of them have one parent, if they're lucky. Often their parents, some of their parents are dead, or in prison, on drugs. Sometimes they don't have parents at all. Sometimes it's a legal guardian, an uncle, maybe a grandma. Regardless, it's sad for them. It's sad for the faculty. And frankly, it's also sad for me, right? I mean, yes, of course, I'm sad for them. And especially now, after spending a year with them and really getting to know them and caring so much about them. What do I do with this? I filmed for a whole year. I can't make a documentary about a school that failed. That's not fair to the kids. I'm not going to show them failing. It's not fair to them. I'm not there as a journalist. I'm there as a filmmaker. It's a different scenario, right? I'm not there to tell the truth no matter what. Yes, I would if I was a journalist doing it, and those would be my responsibilities. But as a filmmaker, it's different. It's a different lens. It's a different perspective. It's a different approach. And in some ways, a different set of standards, actually. Very much so. And so I wouldn't want to do anything unfair to my subjects that I spent the year with, or to the faculty, or to help the community. And I'm not going to do this to my audience. What audience wants to sit through a film that's supposed to be inspirational and see the school failing at the end? That doesn't work. You couldn't even show that in Europe. And certainly not in America, right? I mean, in America, we want to see films about winners. And so I was thinking, okay, well, did I waste a year? In some ways I did. In some ways, I mean, most of what I filmed was useless. I couldn't really use it. But I learned a lot. And now I understood what film I needed to make. And that film was going to be about Gloria Jean Merriex. So I spent a whole other year filming, the very following year. This time, not so much the school itself, although they allowed me to come back as needed in times. And I did some of the interviews there and so forth and so on. But more interviewing those who knew her. Now, that's a challenge too, right? The first was a challenge, as you can see, filming at a school. But the second is a bigger challenge, actually, to be honest. Making a portrait of someone I never met. And it's not just that I didn't meet her, so I don't know her. I didn't get to know her, but I also don't have any footage of her. I didn't get an opportunity to sit down with her and conduct an interview and ask her questions and find out what she's like and follow her around with a camera and dig through her boxes of old material and the way I usually make a film. I didn't get a chance to do that. So I decided to piece together, first and foremost, really the tapestry of her teaching techniques. To focus not so much necessarily on her as an individual, but on what she gave us. What were the lessons? What were the techniques, the pedagogical breakthroughs that she made that are useful to us today that I could convey? And in doing so, I interviewed scholars who studied her colleagues, former students, and so forth and so on to really piece that together. And I created a half-hour documentary called Discovering Gloria. And my audience was going to be teachers. And I took it on the road. I teamed up with school districts and what was it also? Oh, and teacher unions, school districts and teacher unions. I teamed up with that, and we did screenings around the state of Florida in particular. And it was interesting. Those screenings were completely packed, standing room only. It was amazing. There was just really hundreds of people would show up. And it would get a lot of attention in the media. Local media would cover it. It was kind of made a big deal. And I could see that it really resonated with the audience, that they really took to Gloria. You know, the film itself was okay. I don't think there was anything like extraordinary about the film, to be honest. I don't lack any confidence in my filmmaking skills. I just don't think the film was, it was okay. I didn't make it to try to win an Academy Award or anything, right? It was a serviceable film. But I could see even with that, wow, her story, her persona, her charisma, her struggles really resonated with people. And folks told me, listen, don't just make a film just for educators, because there's a bigger audience for this. And I let that sit. I didn't jump on that right away. I also had other projects that I was either finishing or starting, and I was moving to Penn State. There was all this factors in my life going on at the same time, so I kind of let it percolate. Meanwhile, the film itself, Discovering Gloria, is being used in some classes at the University of Florida. It's being used actually still in a couple of education college courses there, and here at Penn State as well. A couple of courses use it as well, and they screen it every semester, and I hear from students who are watching it, education students, and they're really learning a lot from Gloria. So I'm happy it's doing its service. I mean, it's not, getting out there and really changing the world, but it's helping some educators hone their skills, sharpen their perspective, think differently maybe about their students, and so forth and so on. So, but eventually I understood, no, I really do need to make this film about Gloria. And then this is when I made Class of Her Own, which is a feature length, which means it's almost 90 minutes. So it's 3 times as long as the original. And it really does show her whole trajectory. It also enabled me to really dig even deeper into her lessons, right? What were her lessons? Well, first let me tell you about her and tell you about her trajectory, and then I'll get to her lessons. How am I doing at time? Not great, but I think I can do that. I think I can accomplish both goals with the time left before I take questions. So her trajectory. So Gloria Jean Merriex is born in East Gainesville, Florida. She's born and raised there. She's different right from the start from all the other kids. She's very committed to her education. She goes no matter what. Her mom tells the story of even during a storm when the school was practically closed, but they had to keep it open because, again, this is a place where kids get fed. So they keep it open for that reason more than anything else. Otherwise, they will have shut it down. She still goes to school. Who knows if there was even classes? Maybe she just went to the library and read, but she still goes to school no matter what. And then she goes and gets her education degree from the University of Florida, of course. What's interesting is that she's a successful education student who shows a lot of promise and can really go almost anywhere, Teachers are in demand. Maybe not always like they are today. Today there's a huge shortage, from what I understand, around the state and around the country. But even then, teachers were in demand, and she could have gone anywhere. By the way, even in Gainesville, she could have gone. She could have gone to a school on the west side of town if she wanted, right? No problem. But she chose to go back to her school, to Duval. It wasn't called Duval when she was a kid. It was called something else, but that was her school. And they enlarged it a little more, but nonetheless, that's where she went. That's where she grew up. She wants to go back there, and she ends up staying there all her life. And for the first 25 years, she teaches just like any other teacher teaches. Now, what does that look like? You have your curriculum that's given to you by the state, that's given by the district, and you have to follow it. And if that's not enough, they also give you pacing guides. And the pacing guides not only tell you what to follow out of the curriculum, but how and when and for how long. So it's a bit robotic, right? It's a bit robotic, and you kind of go in, this is what I'm supposed to cover today. You cover it with your students no matter what's happening. Maybe there's trauma going on, maybe some big news event happened. You ignore it. You just focus on what's in the scoping, what's in the pacing guide. There's also scope and sequence. That's a whole other thing. We don't need to get too technical. And that's what she does for 25 years. And she's satisfied with it because for the most part, many of her students pass. And she feels, well, that's good enough for them to pass. They're not acing these tests. They're not graduating with honors. They're not going on to magnet schools. But they're passing. And since most of them are so poor and have so many challenges, they lack health care, they lack dental care. I mean, they come to school, with their teeth hurting and all these issues they have to deal with and traumatized for maybe violence they experience or seen. It's awful. It's an awful, awful existence for so many of them that, as a teacher, especially one who grew up there, to feel if I can get these students to pass and graduate and not have to repeat a class and go on to middle school, then I'm successful. And that's her thinking for 25 years. And then the No Child Left Behind law raises the stakes of these standardized tests And now Duval really has to do well, or it faces huge consequences. What are those consequences? Well, if they fail 2 years in a row, they can get shut down. But even after failing just 1 year, their budget is frozen. You think they would need more money, not less money. Their budget is frozen, and their mandates increase, and scrutiny increase substantially. So in the first year where they take this FCAT under the No Child Left Behind standards, they get a D. And you know what? For them, at the time, they'll take it. They're like, we'll take the D. It's fine. It's okay. At least we're not under humongous scrutiny and pressure. But then in 2002, they fail. And just as advertised, the district swoops in, the pressure increases, the budget is frozen, and everyone's told to get in line. And basically told, follow the curriculum and follow the pacing guide. And Gloria says, wait a minute, time out. I've followed this curriculum and pacing guides for 25 years. Now you're coming in and telling me to what? Do more of it? Well, doing more of it will only produce more of the same results. What's the point? And she has an epiphany. And that epiphany takes her a lot further than just that rebellion. Takes her to understand that she had been wrong. It's not just an examination of the system, which she finds to be highly flawed. The district, the state, these crazy tests, this crazy pressure. It's not just that. It's a lot more than that. It's an internal examination and critique, where she realizes she had been wrong. She, Gloria Jean Merriex, had let her students down by expecting so little of them. And in that fashion, she also ended up expecting too little of herself. So she jacks up those expectations way up of her students and of herself, and says immediately to herself, I'm not going to try to just pass anymore. That's as flawed a way of thinking as to do more of the pacing guides and to use more of the curriculum. No. I'm going to now expect everyone, me included, and every single one of my students to excel. And from there, she rebuilds herself as a teacher, rebuilds her classroom, and rebuilds her curriculum. So she takes the curriculum and tosses it away and creates a brand new curriculum that meets her students where they are, where she uses terminologies that they can relate to, where she uses more conventional, more of a conversational tone, where she uses some slang that the kids can relate to, and some drawings and pictures and so forth and so on. So that's one thing she does. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not so easy, but she does it. She's committed to it. The second thing she does is start to infuse her classrooms with hip-hop and dancing and chanting. Chanting she picks up at church. So you chant with the audience. You say something, they call back. It's called call and response, or chanting, or however you want to think of it. I'm sure you can picture it. You might have seen it in a movie, though not necessarily in a classroom. She brings it into the classroom. And she faces a lot of opposition, as you might imagine. First from her own colleagues, who are worried that she's going to draw too much attention to the school. And then from her administration and the district, who threatened to fire her unless she gets in line. So she goes to her principal Lee McNeely, and says, look, before you make a decision, why don't you come spend time in my classroom? And Lee is just blown away by what she sees. I mean, she sees the kind of engagement among the students that she couldn't even imagine was possible. Like, they're so riveted by the learning, they're so into it, they're so energized, that she believes very quickly this is something really special. And so she joins the rebellion. She rebels with Gloria. She gives her all the 3rd and 4th reading students and give her all the 5th math students. And she has her also help the other teachers infuse some of this into their classrooms. For instance, in science, Gloria starts to write science raps as well. So yes, I didn't mention, so when she says, I'm going to put hip-hop in my classroom, she doesn't mean I'm going to bring some hip-hop song in there. No. She creates her own beats, and she writes her own lyrics, and she creates the math rap, the geometry. She calls it the geometry echoes, but it's a rap that goes along with a dance. She creates the reading rap, and so she really does bring it physically into the classroom. She also risks really being ridiculed by her own students, but you know, she's got the street cred to do it, and she pulls it off beautifully, and it catches fire. And she takes this little school from an F to an A in 1 year, which at that point was unprecedented. No school had done that in Florida, and I believe that it might have been the first time nationally as well, from an F to an A in 1 year. And then, as I mentioned, for the subsequent 4 additional years, so for 5 years straight, they aced this test, and by the time she passes away, in fact, soon after she passed away, Duval, a day or two after she passed away, Duval found out that not only did they get an A again, of course, that was almost a given at that point on the test, but the 5th grade math students ranked #1 in the whole state, which was really exciting and sad that she couldn't have received that honor. So, what are the lessons? I want to be able to obviously take questions, so I have about nine minutes to go over the lessons that we can draw from Gloria. So I'll start with, you know, the most obvious lesson, and then I'll come back to this most obvious lesson at the end of talking about all these other lessons, because it's the key one, and we'll have a kind of a better understanding by the time I come back to it. So the key lesson is to meet your students where they are, right? Meet your students where they are. Kind of a cliche by now. We hear that a lot. Meet them where they are. Meet them. But she really knew how to do that, right? And she physically made it happen, like rewriting the curriculum. But she added a component to it that I think is really crucial, that's often left out. Her philosophy was meet your students where they are from where you are. In other words, do it in an authentic way. Like if I was teaching at Duval, let's say I was a teacher there, and I recognized that hip-hop would resonate with the students, I couldn't meet these students where they are using hip-hop, because no one wants to see me rap. You know, no one should be subjected to that. That's a punishment. Maybe only my kids once in a while when we are on a long road trip. But that's about it. And then, believe me, they put on their headphones very quickly. So it's not just a matter of meeting the students where they are. It's meeting the students where they are from where you are in an authentic way. To her, bringing chanting from church was authentic. She was on the church choir. Hip-hop, interestingly enough, she did not like. She didn't particularly like gangster rap in particular. She was more of a jazz person. But nonetheless, it was something authentic, right? That she grew up with, that she understood, that she could do in a way that was true to the place and time that she inhabited. So that's lesson number 1, and we'll come back to it. Another lesson is really interesting, and that is standardized test. Standardized test, particularly in academia, less so in political circles, has a bad rap, and has had a bad rap for almost as long as it has existed, which I believe is more than 100 years. Well, more than 100 years. I think it goes back, I think standardized testing started in this country in the 19th century. And almost as soon as the testing started, the criticism began. And rightly so, right? Let's not pretend that it's a perfect scenario. It's flawed in so many ways. But Gloria took a different approach to it. Gloria said, with her actions, hey, we can't do anything about this, right? So let's make lemonade out of these lemons. And she did, because she then saw what to her was the positive opportunity in standardized testing. That positive opportunity was to level the playing field. Now suddenly, her students were competing with all the other students in the state. And it didn't matter that the other students in some of these other places, including across town, had much better resources, much better facilities, much better conditions to excel, right? They didn't have, if their teeth hurt, they took them to the dentist. Their clothes were clean and fit. They ate 3 square meals at home. They didn't have to go back to the cafeteria on Christmas Day to eat, right? So, but this test leveled the playing field. Took away any excuses. Enabled her students to show that they are just as capable as anybody else. And so she used the standardized testing as a motivational tool. What we're seeing these days, and I'm not here to speak for standardized testing, But I just want to show that, many issues like this one are more complex than just simple yes or no, black and white, do it or don't do it answers. So standardized testing have been diminished in recent years. Schools no longer make them high stakes. They exist, but they're on a lesser level in terms of consequences and so forth and so on. It's not even based on the No Child Left Behind standards anymore. It's something else. And then a lot of universities have done away with the SAT and ACT. But some have brought them back because research now shows that standardized testing is a great way to predict how well a student will do in college, for instance. So they do have their place in time. And they did help this little school become the joy of the community and become an artistic mecca for the whole city of Gainesville, a magnet school where other students started to get bussed into. Because if you wanted to be a piano player or you wanted to learn how to sing, this was the place to go as a kid. This was it in Gainesville. And none of that would have happened if it wasn't for the standardized test. And think of the great confidence that it gave those kids. Great confidence. I did not do a study about this, but I have spoken with and formally interviewed and then spoken with many dozens of Gloria's former students. And I've yet to meet one who's not done well. I'm sure they exist, but I've yet to meet them. Every single one has done well. Some have went on to become teachers. Many have gotten their PhDs. Some have become nurses. One has become a doctor, and so forth and so on. That's in stark contrast to Gloria's students in the past. In the past, many of our students would go on to middle school because they passed, but wouldn't make it much further than that. They would actually stall, and many of them dropped out of school. Many of them ended up in juvie. Some ended up dead. Very few, very, very few went on to college. This was a humongous difference. And even though she didn't teach to the test, she really taught more life skills and she really focused on the development of her kids. She did use this test as a motivational tool, and she did use it to level the playing field and enable her students to compete. So I think the lesson there is not just about standardized testing, that there may be a good side to them, but just maybe in general, that, whatever is there that may be how to change, there's probably an opportunity to use in a way that's positive to you and your colleagues and your students. So that's another lesson. Well, we are running out of time, so I'll kind of race. I probably won't even get, honestly, through all the lessons, but let me see how many I can actually get in. Another lesson is to involve the parents. So right now, if you look at the landscape nationally and you think about parents, I don't know about you, but I get a picture in my mind of parents storming school board meetings and calling for the banning of this book or that book, or for the cessation of this difficult topic instruction, or don't teach my kids about gender, or don't teach them about evolution, or I don't want to see this Toni Morrison book in the library, or so forth and so on, right? Kind of a disparaging picture, at least the one I get and the one that's portrayed in the media about parents. But of course, most parents are not like that at all. And Gloria understood that for her kids to be truly successful, she had to involve their parents. So she visited their homes, she called them up, she befriended them, and she even started a weekly class at night for parents, partly to get them involved and get to know them, and partly, actually, to help the parents learn, because many of the parents didn't know the math and the reading themselves. So she wanted to educate them, and the parents were starting to be left behind, because here are the kids learning so much, they wanted to be able to keep up. So she really did involve the parents to the point that if a student was failing or not following instructions or misbehaving or simply falling behind, she'd take the kid, hop on a phone call and say, hey, Mrs. Thomas, your kid so-and-so, is not doing this, not doing that. I need you to help me with it. So involving the parents is really key. And I think that's something we can really learn. These lessons are particularly helpful in vulnerable communities with vulnerable students, no question about that. And there you might think, well, parents, As I said earlier, they're lucky to have one parent, right? In many cases, they might not even have a parent. And very few had two parents. Very few of the kids had two parents. And so how do you involve them? They're already so busy. Some of these parents have two jobs, sometimes three jobs just to keep up. Well, Gloria understood that that doesn't matter. The parents still care just as much. And they want their kids to succeed. And they want to know. It's not going to add stress to them if they're involved. It's actually going to alleviate it. She understood that. And she stepped in a positively aggressive manner, right? And said, okay, parent, I'm not going to wait for you to show up because you probably never will on your own, but I'm going to get you involved. And it made all the difference in the world. So since we're running out of time, I do want to take questions. I'll come back to the original lesson that I made. There's several more I'm just not going to get to today. If you watch the film, you'll probably be able to extrapolate the lessons for yourself or come up with your own lessons, right? That's the beauty, I think, of filmmaking is you get to kind of make up your own mind. But go back to that notion of meeting your students where they are. So I mentioned earlier you have to do it in an authentic way. But you also have to do it in a way that makes sense for that group of students, right? It's really important. So she didn't say, hey, from now on, everyone should teach reading and math using hip hop and dance. She didn't say that. She said the opposite, actually. It was misunderstood. Some of the scholars and some of the journalists and others thought that was the message. And so for a while, we started to see it. And it became popular around the country. You started to see, I think there's less of it today, although it still persists. But you started to see teachers around the country teaching math and reading and sometimes other subjects as well, using hip hop and using dance. And that may be okay. I'm not saying take it away. It's probably fine with some students where that is something that they seek out, where that is something that resonates with them. But not all students. You have to really get to know your students, their context, their interests, their needs, and meet them where they are. Don't worry about hip hop or dance. Bring it in if it makes sense. But it may be theater that speaks to them more or something else. Figure it out. And don't be so cookie cutter. And of course, I can't put it all on the teachers. It's on our system. The system in itself is too cookie cutter and too imposing, too restrictive on all these teachers, not enabling them to shine. Many of these teachers are charismatic and passionate and knowledgeable, and we need to unleash them and let them become the Gloria Jean Merriex that they're meant to be by letting them meet those students where they are in their authentic way. I can go on, but I'll take questions now from everyone.
We have a couple of questions that have come in. So let me read some of those off here to you. First of all, Rebecca Ann Escott put a comment/question here. She says, I have great concern about the district that I live in, and I have a great longing to engage decision makers around this film and the concepts that it debates. I've seen the best, most gifted teachers in our district get their hands tied, transfer out of their expert areas, and retire as soon as they can. I feel like it feels like a hemorrhage. How are audiences and PA responding, able to access the content?
Yeah, that's. I'm sorry to hear about your district. That's sad. I'm really sorry about this. I do think that a film like this can help, can open eyes, can stimulate the discussion. Honestly, the best thing to do, even though it's available everywhere, you can watch it on Apple TV, you can watch it on Amazon Prime, even on Xbox, everywhere, Comcast, it's available everywhere. I think a screening where we invite educators and especially administrators and policymakers and teachers, of course, but parents, students, we invite them to it. It's a G-rated film, kids can come. A screening and a discussion, I'll be glad to do it. I think that can go a long way. I've seen that happen in a couple of communities that I brought the screening to, where there are, and there's follow-ups. And we're actually following up with a few of them to see how we can help. One of my roles here at Penn State, I'm lucky enough to be the director of the Hamel Family Human Rights Education Initiative, and we provide professional development to K-12 educators to help them meet their students where they are and help their kids gain critical thinking and fact-finding and active listening and civic discourse skills and empathy. And so the initiative is following up some of the screenings I've done and bringing the program to the teachers. So yes, there is such an opportunity. So feel free to contact me directly. I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to email me, and maybe we can set up a screening at your district.
So, we have talked before about some of the other documentaries that you've made. We've talked before about some of the initiatives that you are responsible for, in particular, how you use teaching of the Holocaust to grow kind of empathy within elementary and middle school students. How does the concept of empathy get advanced in this latest documentary that you're involved with?
So empathy is interesting because we think we all have it, we're born with it, kids have it, but it's not. It's something that really has to be cultivated and developed. And the first thing you do with kids is really demonstrate it. You model it for them. You don't try to teach them necessarily, hey, be empathetic, but you act in an empathetic way and they learn from it and they pick it up. So first, Gloria modeled empathy. She empathized with every single student, every single parent, with their conditions, with their circumstances. She gave them tough love that was filled with empathy, but also high expectations. She was able to combine the two. So she modeled it. But then she set up scenarios that enabled her students to become empathetic. For instance, she created a homework buddy. So every student had a homework buddy, and they did their homework together, and they got to know each other. And they would visit their home and see their condition, and not even intentionally start to develop empathy for each other and caring. And so you see it more and more just spreading through the classroom. If she did a class dance and one of the students was out of line, she didn't help. She said, hey, can you please help? She would give the students the opportunity to help each other. She gave them opportunities to step up and own their learning. That was a big part of it. So for instance, on occasion, she would throw the wrong answer at them. And they would react, no, you're wrong. And she would challenge them, you're telling me I'm wrong? I'm the teacher. And they would challenge her back. So she really empowered them to own their education, help each other. So she put it all together in one combination. It's a really great example.
So when I think about the current state of public education, and I think of kind of the intersection or the involvement of government, I guess my question is, do you feel, you've described this teacher as a rebel teacher, but do you feel like teachers have enough flexibility in the classroom to make some of these decisions like your protagonist made in the film here?
Sadly, no. Sadly, no. I mean, if a teacher behaved like Gloria today, they would get fired or demoted or disciplined. And a great way to teach empathy and some of these other skills we mentioned is through the instruction of difficult topics like gender and evolution and the civil rights movement and the Holocaust and so forth and so on. And more teachers are shying away from touching those subjects. Sometimes they just skip them altogether because parents get upset and the administration gets upset and it's controversial and they don't know how to teach it. And in some states, thankfully not in Pennsylvania, but in other states like Florida, where we actually have a program, you could get arrested and thrown in jail if you teach a certain topic or teach it the wrong way. So no, the cookie cutter way of teaching, the lecture mode of teaching, which is really not very useful to kids, they need to be hands-on, especially in the 21st century, is actually more embedded than ever at a time when we need to get away as far as possible from it. So it's actually getting worse, not better, sadly. And the reason there's a documentary about Gloria is that she stood out. She's not one in a million, she's one in 100 million. And that's interesting for a documentary, but sad for our educational system. And the other big issue, and one we're trying to address with the Hamel Family Human Rights Education Initiative, is that the kids are not being given the skills they need to succeed and even survive the 21st century and for our democracy to prosper. So they're just being given a lot of information to memorize and then regurgitate on a test, which is useless because they forget about most of it, right? instead of being given the opportunities to develop critical thinking skills, to be able to tell fact from fiction, to navigate this deluge of information, misinformation, disinformation, deep fakes, and so on and so on. They don't know what to do with it. They're being fed by an algorithm. They're being brainwashed on a daily basis, and we're not giving them the tools to deal with it. You know, how to listen actively, how to have empathy, how to conduct civic discourse that's respectful, where you seek other points of view, how to triangulate information, how to find other credible sources and different alternative points of view so you can see the different sides, because issues are complex more than ever. Kids are not being given that. And that's really the role of the initiative, propelled by, you know, and inspired by folks like Gloria, to bring that into our school system. That's our mission.
So in order to affect the kind of change that you think needs to come about, right? What from I see this film as being really inspirational for teachers, maybe really inspirational for parents who might want to do some of this kind of stuff at home with their children. But how do you affect the kind of public policy that you need to affect to make sure that teachers do get this kind of flexibility within their classrooms, right? How do you target lawmakers? How do you target departments of education to adopt some of these practices?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'll tell you, with the initiative, we are going directly to them. So with us today among our attendees is Vic Hamill. You can see him. Hi, Vic. And Vic actually leads our policy makers efforts to do precisely what you just said. He leads that effort for us. He is really great at it, both in Harrisburg, now also in New York we're starting, as well as Washington. And we are going directly to policymakers, to lawmakers, congressmen, senators, you name it, governors. We're going directly to them and to their staff folks and really telling them, opening their eyes. And you know what? On the left and on the right, it's resonating. They're saying, you're right. Yes, our kids do need these skills. And no, they're not getting them. And yeah, our system's broken. We need to fix it. We have yet to meet someone who says, no, things are great and we're going to uphold the status quo. I mean, look, every single industry that you can think of has evolved tremendously in the last few years, much less in the last 100 years, right? Medicine is not the same that it was 100 years ago. Aerospace, I mean, I can go on. And education is the same. We teach the same way. We stand there and we lecture at the kids and then test them on their memorization. That can't continue. That's not sustainable. We're talking about something not sustainable. Here's something that everyone agrees is not sustainable, that way of teaching. So we are there, and Vic is leading us on that front really ably. We're there to change the policy around this so that our educational system in a whole together really meets students where they are and gives them what they need to succeed in this century, not in the 19th century, but today, in this complex world.
So, Bo, you're a wonderful storyteller. We could listen to you talk more and more about the work, but we are unfortunately out of time. If people are interested in getting more information about the work that you're doing or about the center that you lead here at Penn State, where can they go to find that information?
There is a bio page for me on the Balisario. I'm at the Balisario College, so there is a bio page there. I'm on IMDb, on Wikipedia. But really, if you want something specific, please feel free. I put my email in the chat. Please email me, and I'll send you whatever specific information you want. If it's about the initiative, I'll send you about the initiative. It's about this film, I'll send you about this film. I have hundreds, really, all combined. I have hundreds of links and articles and all sorts of stuff. So I don't want to just throw it all at everyone. Just please email me, and I'll be glad to send you whatever you need.
And we will include the links that you've provided to us. We just dropped it in the chat there for your bio on the Belisario page. We'll put that in the follow-up email that goes out to all of our participants. But Bo, on behalf of the Penn State Alumni Association, thank you so much for joining us on the virtual speaker series today.
Thank you, Paul. Always a pleasure. Take care.
And we want to thank all of you, our participants, for Zooming in with us today. If you like this episode of the virtual speaker series, we hope that you will go to our website, check out past episodes as well, or our other in-person and virtual events that we are promoting out there at alumni.psu.edu. Thanks again for Zooming in and for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
Penn State.